I welcome you all for this breakfast meeting on the topic how to take away the benefits of multidisciplinary practice. And to dwell upon this subject, we have CA Girish Kaushik with us. May I call upon CA Kiran sir to come over to dais and then welcome him with double bouquet. Escort him. Thank you, Girish sir. Thank you, Kiran. I have a privilege in introducing today's speaker. Girish Kaushik is a chartered accountant in practice. He is a partner with CA and Associates, a CA firm in Bangalore with 6 partners and 200 plus associates in 6 verticals. Girish is also a registered valuer, CISA and a CPA. He primarily advises clients in transaction advisory and valuations and leads new initiatives for his firm. Prior to CA, he was an AVP Finance with Wipro Limited, where he did multiple roles: internal audit, business finance, large deals, and M&A. He did his articleship with Deloitte in Bangalore. He lives in Bangalore with his wife and 2 daughters, while also managing a profitable agricultural farm near Bangalore. With this brief introduction, I present before you CA Girish Kaushik. Over to you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. So, first disclaimer, this is the first time I'm speaking in the institute. So, all the mistakes are mine. Please don't ask too many questions. It's a difficult topic, I think, because there's nothing technical in this. So, I can't even pretend that I know something. I can't quote sections, I can't quote case laws. There's nothing in this. This is a general topic. It's a breakfast session. We all had coffee, so I can't even hope that people will be asleep. Not going to happen. So, and then the topic itself was a little confusing. I spent a lot of time trying to figure out whether we want to take away the benefits, which means we should reduce the benefits of multidisciplinary practice, or how do we run a multidisciplinary practice. So, what I have tried to do today is try to analyze the topic in itself through a couple of lenses. I will very generously throw in my personal experiences, good, bad, ugly, whatever it is. As I was introduced, there are multiple disciplines in the firm. We built out our firm as a multidisciplinary firm from the time we started the firm. And by nature, I do too many things. At the same time, I keep getting the brickbats from my friends and family that there are too many things that I'm handling. So let me try and see if I can include all of those experiences and talk about this. Feel free to stop, ask questions. If I know, I will answer. Otherwise, I'm sure there are so many other senior members of the profession here. I will call upon for help. So, am I audible? So this, as many people may know, is the Vitruvian Man. So when we talk about multidisciplinary polymath, I think the name that comes up is Leonardo da Vinci's name. Right? So the guy was an author, engineer, artist, sculptor, painter. I don't know what he did not do. So many times when we talk about a chartered accountant, I feel like the Vitruvian Man. And I'll talk about that in the next slide. So I thought it's hard to put that picture there. I thought I'll take this session across about 5 heads. What is it? What is multidisciplinary practice? Indian context, accounting context, what do we understand? Most of us don't, but I try and explore it in any case. There is still a definition of multidisciplinary practice. There is a CA Institute given definition as part of the Act and the regulations. More applicable to multidisciplinary firm of chartered accountants, but we'll still explore that because that's the concept in any case. What are the benefits? Most of us know the benefits, but we'll still talk about it. But there are things that we need to be aware of, cautious of when we're setting up something, in a multi-vertical, multidisciplinary fashion. And some of the best practices and experiences. Like I said, I will loosely follow this. I will try and talk more of our personal experiences within the firm. Many of my partners are here. And feel free to please share your experiences as well. So I like to study philosophy, Indian history and all of that. And one thing that always talks to me when I look at our own mythology or Indian history is there has always been verticalization, and this is something that we speak about in the firm as well. There's always been verticalization, specialization in our Hindu pantheon of gods. At the same time, bringing it all together at one Vishnu level or one Shiva level. So I was trying to prepare this presentation. I found this blog post written by a Westerner who talks about how, and he talks about Krishna being the aggregator, has put individuals in charge of every specific thing, including Parjanya, who is a god for rain. That's all his job is. So he's a complete specialist. It all comes up together at Krishna's level. So I think, as Indians, we've always known, understood the benefits as well as the way to manage individual specialization, succeeding to somebody at the top. And of course, chartered accountants, especially in India, have always been multidisciplinary, to be honest, right? And auditor has always been a trusted advisor. There's many of us who've been in practice for a while have always been that one person, one go-to person for our clients. Maybe an audit client, but there is a tax advice that's going on. Maybe an audit client, but there may be a corporate law advice that's going on there, and so on and so forth. In fact, again, to call out a personal experience, my father was in practice from 1975 and until very recently. And it always used to amaze me. He would have foreign clients in front of him. Privacy, confidentiality, I think implicitly clients are waived. So they all used to sit in front of him. One person is asking about some divorce settlement for his daughter. Another person is talking about some corporate law issue that he has. There's a tax advice that's going on. Somebody wants to buy a house and he is advising how to partition it between the sons. So I think, in that 6 hours, 8 hours that he used to work, he would handle pretty much every other discipline that we put up on our websites today as individual service lines or verticals. So that need for one-stop shop has always been there, and that's not going to go away anywhere, because ability to go to multiple specialists, you can't go to a food specialist every time. You need a generalist who brings it together and puts it across and creates that platform where you can go and get your advice. At the same time, while I gave the anecdote about my dad, the way to handle that evolved over a period of time as sophistication increased, right? So the same corporate law advice could not be given offhand. Company law itself completely went through an overhaul. The new act came in, procedures changed, NCLT came in. So there was suddenly a need for bringing in a specialist to handle that particular thing. At the same time, having somebody to aggregate it. Just to go back to that example that we had in the previous slide. There is always a need for a Krishna or a Vishnu to aggregate it all together and make sure that the right advice is going to the right context. So, as I was preparing this presentation, I was in parallelly reading this book again, a book by David Epstein called Range. Very interesting book. And it was relevant for this presentation because he actually takes a completely different worldview of saying that specialization is good, it's important, savants are important, Tiger Woods is important, but you also need a Roger Federer, you also need a A.B. de Villiers who did everything. Who did rugby he represented his country in rugby, to cricket, he was a topper in school, he did everything. But he was still able to find his match quality and actually go into cricket where he actually got his success. So experience from a single domain, very difficult. Therefore, specialization is very difficult, but at the same time, we can't get away from multidisciplinary. So I think that sets a context for trying to understand how we have at least set up a multidisciplinary practice. So, I was just going through websites of various firms, and I started with the Big Four. I started with my alma mater. And every single website, regardless of big, small, Big Four, Big Six, my friends in practice in Bangalore, everybody talks about a broad range of services and solutions. This is Deloitte. EY talks about integrated service lines, deep sector knowledge, new opportunities. But again, multidisciplinary. They can't just talk about one thing, obviously, right? KPMG talks about territories, talks about global services, audit, tax and advisory, again multidisciplinary. Then I went into our Indian firms, ASA is a very friendly firm to us. They recently signed up with Baker TV, as many of us may know. Again, corporate strategists, accountants, tax advisory, financial, marketing analysts, and Gurujana, our good friend from Bangalore. This is on their website. So there are things like that on our website as well. I don't want to put that in because, basically the whole point is everybody wants to advertise that they have a wide array of services. Anybody who wants scale has to have a wide array of services. So multidisciplinary practice became unnecessary. All of them advertise a specialized vertical, which means that you need to have a depth, you need to have that ability to carry the water as far as that particular subject is concerned. All of them have a very broad range, very diverse offerings. At the same time, all of them in common are addressing business problems. They're not addressing just tax problems, they're not addressing just regulatory problems or audit problems. All of them claim to address business problems at an aggregated level. So I think all of us are already multidisciplinary, but this session probably is about how, multiple facets of it. So in the context of a CA firm, as we saw in the previous slide, I think having a multidisciplinary practice is about having various services, wide spectrum, linked to financial business, essentially calling it as a business advisory at the aggregated level. Serving business needs, not serving tax or serving one particular need, otherwise you're not a one-stop shop. But it also means how do you break those silos between various verticals, make sure that there are no separate profit centers that are working very, very independently within the firm. How do you make sure that they all collaborate with each other and not say that, audit team sit in the first floor, tax team sits in the second floor, they don't even take the same lift or whatever. So multidisciplinary practice essentially is having a broad range of services, very well-defined specialized services, depth. Ensuring there is collaboration between professionals from various disciplines, we'll go into it a little bit. Comprehensive solutions, aggregated solutions, make sure that you're addressing business requirements and not just advising on one particular thing. You can give fantastic tax-saving advice, but if the tax-saving advice remains a tax-saving advice and actually doesn't lead to the objective of the business going forward, if you actually tell somebody to close a business or not go through a particular transaction because it's tax efficient, I don't think it's good advice. So therefore, a collaborative, comprehensive solution to address the diverse needs of clients. Again, in the context of accounting, I think I'm going too fast. I might finish off well before 2 hours. I'm just saying, I hope the Institute still gives us all this credit of 2 hours. But I don't know how much more to talk about multidisciplinary practice. But I'll try. So in the context of accounting firms, we've all seen the traditional, the left side of the logo is from our website. So we've all seen the traditional practice areas that we've been advertising or able to set up as practice, right? Consulting, valuation, diligence, accounting advisory, IFRS, GAAP, US GAAP, specific advice on, let's say, revenue recognition. Assurance is something that all of us are very well aware of, statutory audits, governance, risk and control, internal audits. Controller as a service, accounting advice. Global just recently concluded, and the whole national or international level conference was about how we can export accounting services. So accounting outsourcing is very important. Controller as a service very important. Indirect tax, extremely well-established specializations within accounting and auditing world. We are all aware of it. What's also happening, and estate planning. I spoke about what used to happen in our own firm. But on top of that, from a discipline perspective, you go through any of the websites that I pulled up earlier. Most of us know many colleagues who do these. IS audits, SOC audits, ITGC audits become extremely, extremely important. It's a business need, and it's a discipline that stands slightly separately from governance, risk and control. At the same time, under that umbrella, needs extremely specialized knowledge, and people who are not necessarily just chartered accountants. It may require engineers, it may require cybersecurity specialists and so on. Similarly, ESG. ESG is another area. If we start talking, I think we can finish the 2 hours in debating whether ESG as a discipline should exist or not. But as we can see from the words response. ESG is an extremely important vertical to have. Most big firms have put in efforts, investments in the last couple of years to actually build very deep specializations and large teams to address ESG requirements of clients. Forensic audit, family business advisory, strategy consulting, workforce management. You know, entire thing starting from workforce planning right up to exiting the employees, retrenchments, to handling employee litigations, to the entire gamut. So all of these have become specializations that some of us may not have realized when we started our practices, that something like this could exist. I was speaking to somebody yesterday about fund accounting, and I actually inserted it in the last minute yesterday. There's so many of us in Bangalore who are doing fund accounting for VC funds, for mutual funds, extremely profitable, and there are hundreds of thousands of funds in the US, small to large. So the opportunity that is there to create specializations and another discipline under accounting is very high. Takeaway is, beyond audit, tax and traditional areas of practice, chartered accountants practice has expanded to domains and requirements of business that some of us could not have, many of us could not have envisaged, even 10 years back or 5 years back. So when we think of establishing a multidisciplinary practice, I think it makes sense to actually put that in the context of today's requirements of business, see where the demand is going, and actually develop specializations and create that platform within the firm to address some of these new requirements that come back. So coming to how the institute is viewing it, actually I think our institute, as in most cases, is ahead of the other institutes or other professions in thinking about requirement to create a platform for multidisciplinary service. It's an irony as well, and I'll address that. So they actually amended the law a long time back, the CA Act, and brought in definitions for multidisciplinary practice for CAs in practice. So they spent a lot of time, effort and thinking to define the term, define who could become your partners in a firm. So you could actually potentially take a company secretary as a partner, you could potentially take an advocate as a partner, an architect, an actuary, an engineer as a partner in the same firm that you are working as. Of course, they have also created a set of regulations, forms and all those administrative things that are required to actually distinguish an MDP firm from another CA firm. It gets a different membership number, a lot of those things. But our institute, our profession actually recognizes that as businesses in India become more sophisticated, as global businesses come in, we can't remain just a service provider with a limited set of services that we can offer. Of course, Big Four consulting firms, many of the other professionals have already realized it and put in structures that address this. But our institute was pretty much the first institute to put in a formal structure of where you could actually become a partnership firm with advocates, with actuaries, with architects. I don't know why architects, but I'm sure there's some use case to having an architect with a chartered accountant. But that's a lot of it. And however, I don't think the reciprocity on the other side is going to happen anytime soon, because I don't think there's an urgency on the other professions to actually facilitate this. There may be other reasons, there may be self-protection requirements, legal requirements. For example, advocates are prohibited by their legal requirements or bar and other things to actually be partners with somebody else and provide legal services. And I think CWAs and CSS, I think when the regulations have permitted it, I think they have been given a strong advisory not to get into it till further notice. So I think the concept is still a bit of a limbo. But what was important was that I think this is the direction in which the profession is going. CA Institute is leading the way, and I think they will facilitate at some point of time to create firms that are larger than just chartered accountancy firms that we are very accustomed to seeing today.
CA is also, it's reciprocal from CA. As a CA Institute permit somebody to join.
CA Institute has said you can go and start. You can't call it an MDP CA firm, but you can become a partner in the CA.
Suppose an MDP company secretary firm.
You could become. According to the Act and regulations.
It has to be initiated by the CA regulations,
yes.
Not by the other regulations.
Not by the other. So the other ones have also changed the regulations, as per my knowledge, but they have given advisory to their members not to go ahead till they actually figure out what the impact of that is.
So what is the actual structure of MDP?
It will be a partnership firm or an LLP, very similar structure.
So different from a CA firm, huh?
It is, because you will get the FRN number will be preceded by MDP. So to identify that you are an MDP firm.
So two firms are operating independently, means that?
No, what I would assume what they are trying to do is, let us say if you want to have a CA firm and an MDP CA firm, you could have two firms. But they are envisaging a situation where you are one MDP CA firm. As long as you are majority chartered accountants, you can provide assurance services. Number of partners or CAs are more than the other professions, you can provide assurance services. So they have put in some structure to this to allow you to actually be a CA firm. At the same time, take other professionals to create an equal footing for all partners. I mean, imagine if I had to take a company secretary as a partner of mine, but the structure doesn't allow it. How do I allow that individual a career growth and skin in the game for him to actually develop his practice alongside me? You would rather say that, look, I will go on my own.
Yeah.
So this structure is supposed to help all of us incentivize each other appropriately and grow the firm to a scale where it can compete with global firms. So therefore a separate designation, MDP CA firm, separate registration number, a structure to it. For example, I mean, CA Institute has its own structures. Branch head can never be a non-CA. If you have a branch, you cannot have a non-CA head. You have to have majority CAs who take assurance engagements, to take audits.
So same regulations are also in CS and CWA.
I'm not aware. But I'm assuming that they will mirror the same.
Because they also want to have majority of CS in their MDP firms.
They will have, but at the same time, if you see the statutory requirement of where they are, so for example, I'm sure an MDP CS firm will have restrictions on saying that if you want to become a company secretary for a listed company or a large company,
Yeah.
you can't become unless you are a majority CS.
Yeah, that
It
is-
makes sense as well.
Yeah.
So that majority requirements or profession related requirements, I'm assuming will be driven by regulations and requirements of what each,
So
particular.
what happens is it's a MDP CS firm, they cannot take audit and assurance as per institute.
They will not.
Uh,
They will not.
They will not be permitted because if you want to become a CS of a listed company, they will want to
Majority CS there.
see.
But I'm assuming the way this should play out,
Yeah.
hopefully, is that you'll have MDP CS firms, which are really core specialization of their DNA is being company secretaries, right, and corporate law experts.
Yeah.
But they will have chartered accountants to maybe participate in financial planning, financial projections, or valuation services, or services that go along with company secretarial service. I'm assuming to give them scale.
So what is the benefit then of a MDP? Because you will not be able to do assurance services if you are in a MDP CS firm.
Yeah, you may not be able to do assurance,
Yeah.
which is what I was trying to say. Assurance is one part of the service.
Yeah.
Company secretary firms, and I know few firms here in Bangalore which are very large, which actually provide much more than what just just secretarial services. Many of them have rolled over into legal services as well. Of course, they can represent in NCLT in any case, but many of them have partnered with advocates in a loose manner to actually provide litigation services as well.
So that is, you can say, giving an assignment to another professional.
That is today.
That is today. Yeah.
I am hoping that a company secretary multidisciplinary firm, MDPCS, will be able to take an advocate as a partner and not have to,
Advocate they are not permitted.
I'm hoping at some point of time. This is all a hope. The MDP regulations are all a hope. I don't think there is a single MDP CA firm or CS firm, I may be wrong. Today that has practically been set up and actually been able to work, because while CAs have opened the doors, CSS and CWAs have not been able to come in. Advocates anyway can't come in, they won't come in.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't make sense for them to come in, right? They have that exclusivity which they will want to maintain.
Correct.
But I think the concept is that leave aside the regulations for a second. And I talk about what I'm saying in a little more detail. If you are able to create a structure within your firm which incentivizes each of those varied discipline specialists to actually come up in their careers within the firm on an equal footing from a remuneration perspective, from a respect perspective, from a decision-making perspective, you will achieve this in some way or the other from a scale point of view, which is what many other firms are already doing. I have engineers in my firm. I have to give them a career path. This is a reality.
Yeah.
They can never become partners. Maybe they'll become directors. I don't know. We'll find a designation that will make sense. We'll find a way to make that work. I'm saying all of us are used to making that work. Big Four has a lot of professionals who are non-CAs. Many of them. I mean, probably if you were to take a cut of a number of CAs to non-CAs from a consulting perspective, from software implementation, from ERP implementation, Big Four may carry a lot more of engineers in their ranks in sheer numbers than chartered accountants. So I'm saying we've already been addressing that in some way or the other. People who have created multidisciplinary practices have addressed it in some ways. Regulation is trying to facilitate it, but not very successfully yet.
So you were saying that if I have an MBP registration, I get a separate number. So let's assume there were two partners in a CA firm which is running. They want to bring an actuary or engineer into play. Will the MDP firm be a separate entity, or the CA existing partnership firm has to close down and become the MDP?
I don't think you need to close down, but I think you will have other things playing on there because if you
Will it be converted or topic?
I don't think there is a conversion provision from whatever regulations I read in the last 2 days. Conversion has not been addressed yet, but I think it will be a new firm. I'm also assuming some of these decisions will be decided by those people who actually set up these firms based on what their objective is.
Because they won't want to lose their brand name.
They won't want to lose their brand name. Number two, they may be firms that are dependent or that are specialized in bank audits, let's say for example, or who are dependent or who are interested in making sure that they get empaneled jobs and so on and so forth. How does an MDP firm versus a traditional CA firm figure in the tendering process? We don't know. Because if you see any of the tendering documents or empanelment documents, not tendering, I should not use the word tendering. Empanelment documents, it talks about CAs, how many of them are in whole-time practice, what are their qualifications. None of the other side of the equation have changed, no, yet. Which is why I'm saying from a regulatory perspective, this is a directional, aspirational point of view. CA firm has taken the first step to put that structure in place, a very loose framework. We have to still build the walls with it.
No, so the regulation gives us the seniority of the firm. Continues or it is from zero again?
It's a very good question. I don't think they'll address that problem yet.
Because some firm might be operating from last 30 years, now they want to convert it to MDP. And suddenly if you say now you start from a 0 year, because now you are born.
Absolutely. No, I think that's the same question that he asked as well. I don't think they have addressed it. But these questions will come up because as, let's say this roadblocks are removed and some of us want to create them as MDP firms. Of course we will ask that question. My firm, for example, in its current avatar is 12 years old. Why will I want to go and say that again, going back to some empanelment requirements. RBI will say how many years have you been operating from?
Yeah.
How will you justify? And then again, RBI will say how many chartered accountants? Who are all the partners? Why do you have a company secretary as a partner? Why do you have an actuary as a partner? See, some of these things have not been addressed. I think these are, which is why I spent only 2 slides on regulations in this deck, because nothing is clear. I could find only one tax bureau article in the whole Google search that I did on MBPCS. Nothing else is there. So I'm assuming that things will become clear when reciprocity improves, when you're actually practically moving ahead to start setting up some of these things. Otherwise, it's dead in the water.
So from how many years this MDP concept is there?
I think our institute did that about 6-7 years back. 21 amendment only notified who can come in. The ability to open MDP firms was there even before. So they operationalized who can become partners only in 20. Can I go ahead? So I think some of these are obvious, but I will, since I have to still make sure that at least another 1 hour I have to be here, hopefully. I will still go through this. I think the benefits of having multidisciplinary practice under the same roof is obvious. Again, a personal anecdote here. So, whenever we partners sit, we meet every Wednesday morning and we we have a lot of fun together, we fight, we do all of that. But one question that we keep always asking each other is, so we are now about 200 people. Every month we have to struggle for payroll, we have to ensure that there's money in the bank to pay. Somebody will go on leave, somebody will go on something, some article clerk wants extra leave. 1,000 problems every day, right? So yesterday we had 3 people who were leaving because some other firm has offered them every 6 months they will give them increments. How much, what? So we don't know. So I'm just saying that there are very mundane problems we solve for 100 to 200. So the choice between whether I should operate a boutique, specialized one-person firm with maybe 3 or 4 assistants and run that versus running an organization or an institution primed for scale and trying to do the assignments or the type of clientele that I want to do is a personal choice. I think all of us need to make that choice. Once you make that choice that you want to build something of scale, an institution where there is continuity and you're building something greater than your own personal platform, once that choice is made, literally we cannot go back from being a multidisciplinary practice. Right? And each of us need to establish the specializations and so on and so on. Both of them are very valid choices, very personal choices. But once you've decided to build a large practice primed for scale, you have to offer breadth and depth under one roof. And I keep using this term. You have to be broad, you have to be wide, you have to offer multiple services. At the same time, I think gone are the days when we can say I am alone, but I can provide you everything. I can do GST, I can do income tax, I can do transfer pricing, I can do company law, I can do family estate bill planning. Personally, I don't have bandwidth. Second, the laws themselves are branched out, the requirements of business and it's branched out to an extent where unless you bring in specialists and then you can't really provide that quality and scale of services that today is demanded. So the benefits of MDP is actually having that scale so that when somebody walks in, nobody walks in with a problem that's single dimensional. There's no problem, whether it's a business question or a personal finance related question. It can never just be a income tax question. It has to be a GST question. There is how do you account for it? How do you show it in your income tax return? Okay, how do you plan your will after that? I'm saying from a personal perspective. From a business perspective, a decision to set up a plant is never just a decision to set up a plant. It's about logistics. It's about which state gives benefit. It's about what is your input credit versus output credit, what is the ratio, is it inverted, all of those things. So that giving the opportunity for a client to walk into your door and get a solution across all disciplines from a specialist, I think is a huge advantage. So that one-stop shop actually leads to, I mean, calling it client delight, but I would want to have a client who comes in and asks me a question and I say, okay, I'm going to help you with this. For this, you please talk to this friend of mine. For this, I don't know who else to talk to. You talk to somebody else. So the ability to actually give that comprehensive advice and satisfaction to a client is at the core of a multidisciplinary practice, according to me. What that does is it deepens the relationship with the clients. And again, I go back to personal experience. There are clients, my fathers, who've been with us for 30, 40 years. Talked to somebody yesterday. And he wants advice on how to split his assets between his children. I came from Deloitte, I had no clue how to handle all of this when I came into practice. So the thing is, but it's a relationship, it's a 40-year relationship. So I had to spend the time, effort and understand from various people, pull that knowledge together to give him that solution. And now, and that man is 80 years old, he is very weak. He makes it a point to come to office. Got me a small wallet yesterday. That is probably much more valuable to me than all the fees that I can earn from a corporate client. But the point is, and that same thing can be replicated in the corporate setup as well, because those relationships also are built upon whether you are able to come in and help them at the time of the requirement and actually pull in all the services that are required to be serviced. So I think it deepens the relationships and leads to a lot of stickiness. Once you are able to provide 2 services, 3 services to a client, they don't have to go to another chartered accountant. There is no competition there. They don't have to go to an actuary. They don't have to, say, in an ideal world when we can have partners as actuaries, they don't have to go to an actuary to get a valuation done, right? So I think that stickiness improves, deepens the relationship significantly. Of course, higher trust, right? At the same time, we went through the websites of some of the big four, some of the bigger firms in India and so on. So how do we compete with them unless we are able to provide a multi-dimensional service? And again, personal experience. There is a group we started working with about 9-10 years back when I just came into practice. There were about six companies at that time. Now there are about 40 companies. And their requirement was very clear. They said, look, I am only one finance controller for 6 companies. I can't do everything. There is a statutory auditor that you don't touch, but everything else can you handle. So we actually put together a team of varied professionals to handle everything for them, including PF, ESI, GST, TDS. Some of them, when we started off, we were all complaining, saying that it's very menial work, it's very small work, it's just return filing, so they'll scream at you, they will say this, they will say that, it's very confusing, 6 clients, it's not remunerative, and so on and so forth. 10 years later, there are a group of 40 companies. We handle everything still. It's probably one of our largest revenue paying clients. Probably, I'm not sure. Probably. But the thing is, that same corporate deep relationship has worked so well that even Big 4, Big 6 has not been able to get into any of the areas that we service, including litigation support, including transfer pricing. So I'm just saying, how do you compete? And these are all the success stories I'm sharing. There are a lot of failures also like this. So how do you? Sorry.
You require that kind of infrastructure.
You do.
You have to invest also.
Absolutely. And that's exactly the point I was trying to make. One is, when we did not invest initially, I used to go sit in Whitefield, and that was the biggest failure. I had to go from Jayanagar to Whitefield, right? And till we actually set up that infrastructure, we struggled for the first 1 or 2 years. That every time I question myself, do I require to do this? I just sit there, somebody will come, some returns I'll file. I'll earn the same amount of money, at the end of the day, if you draw a P&L, it's not very different. So, but it's a personal choice.
Your cost of operation also goes up.
Significantly. And the headache of operations also goes up.
And your clientele also should be willing to pay you.
Exactly. All of those, we still live in hope, like the CA Institute, that we will at some point of time demonstrate that value. But if I'm not in the party, I can't dance. So if I have to be in that party, I have to create that infrastructure and see whether I can dance at some point of time. So if I have to compete with large firms, there is really no choice but to create a comprehensive offering. Or you become such a super specialist that you can actually run a boutique firm, and there are so many success stories like that. I mean, say Mr. Kincha or somebody, they don't need to actually sit and create multiple service lines and break their head. So either you go really, really deep, and we'll address that. There are some couple of nice anecdotes or stories that I found. Or you actually create that depth and infrastructure. So I think corporate, from personal perspective for us, it was very important that we build scale, and again, most of our partners were in Big 4 alumni at some point of time. I spent a lot of time in Big 4. For us, it was imperative that we create something of scale from a personal satisfaction perspective. We were not ready to retire. We were in our 30s, 40s. So that was a personal choice. Once we said we want to be in that zone, we had to create that infrastructure that's required, like you rightly pointed out, to be able to compete at a global level. Also because, again, we got an assignment to prepare a costing manual for a manufacturer, Japanese company. So Japanese companies are extremely difficult to work with as well, because highly detail oriented, and so we couldn't handle it alone. So we got in some engineers involved in that, and extremely demanding client, to the extent that literally personally I have taken a measuring tape and measured their factory. They made us measure the gangways, they made us measure the distance between 2 machines, and we had to prepare the SOP for costing. Now, there is no way we could have done that without actually involving a professional who is not at all linked to finance, like an engineer. There is no way, and we involved a costing professional, a CWA, because we had no clue how to prepare those cost sheets. I mean, of course, CA exam we had studied, that was 20 years back. We had to prepare cost, they had to undergo cost audits, so it has to be in the same formats. It had to all match up to the financials. We had to ensure that, inadvertently we are not changing the cost structures or allocation structures that creates an inverted duty structure. This is the time when VAT was applicable, not a very recent example. I'm saying even when we set up 10 years back, we had to actually bring in people from other disciplines to help us handle that particular assignment. Point being, every problem that comes in, if it is worth solving, is always multidimensional. Otherwise, it's not worth solving. I mean, it will get solved somehow or the other. If it's a multi-dimensional problem, you can't do it with, I mean, you can't single-handedly do it. Not everybody can single-handedly do it, let's say. There may be some people who are Vitruvian mind. So, law firms, and I work very closely with a legal company, have traditionally employed people, specialists, scientists, PhDs in biology, in pharmacy, in medicine, MBBS doctors. Even today you see software companies employing doctors, teleradiology companies employing doctors, and so on and so forth. Pretty much, and law firms, the firm that I work with, we have 4 PhDs and 1 double doctorate, 1 in physics and 1 in some other subject. I don't even know what and he's a lawyer. He's an actual patent attorney. He's a US patent attorney. After doing PhD in physics and PhD in some rocket science, I don't know whatever. So the thing is, and I asked him why. I mean, he spent some 12 years studying or 18 years studying post graduation. So if he has to file a patent for a particular company in deep tech or deep research, he can't even write that application unless he knows the subject. He can't write it. He can't exclude. He can't create exclusions. He can't create that differentiation in the invention that a particular client has created versus what is there in the market or what is already patented, unless he understands that subject. And he can't do it anyways if he is not a lawyer. So within himself, he has created a multidiscipline. And lawyers were anyway, I think IP lawyers specifically, created this practice of having multiple disciplines and multiple specializations within their firms to cater to this. So unless you are able to pool that experience and pool that expertise, you can't give a holistic solution. So you have to cross-pollinate, I feel, right? And also what's happened in this ChatGPT, and I wrote a good part of this presentation using ChatGPT. Okay, one more disclaimer. Information is in your hands, and tax guru, of course, right? I don't know about most of the senior people here, but if I have to search for case laws, that is the first place I go to. My tax partner almost always has palpitations, because she will open the database, she will do search, she will do keyword search, and I will open tax guru and we will be arguing. But point is, of course I will be wrong, because information is universal, it's extremely democratic, it's available to everybody who knows how to search a keyword. What is not universal is the application. So, more and more skills and specialization is not the answer. Contrary, or rather, I'm trying to bring it in saying that specialization is extremely important, but just having specializations is not enough. The ability to actually pull it together into a comprehensive solution that actually addresses that problem is the question. We were having another debate last week in the firm. A client has asked a question, and tax team came with the answer. They have a very good answer. There's a precedence. You can work all of that. But that answer, the solution that the tax team came up with, is not going to answer the business problem that that person has. Because the problem is not just tax saving. The problem is probably a joint venture negotiation that cannot just hinge only on a tax advice. So, if they had gone to a tax boutique firm, they may not have got it. I'm not saying we gave it. I'm saying that the benefit of having multidisciplinary practice is that you can actually bring in all of the perspectives together to actually address the business problem on hand and not just one dimension of it. So, we're just anyway coming to what we personally think are critical success factors to build a multidisciplinary practice. So there's a nice anecdote. So there's this mathematician called Freeman Dyson, 19th century guy, who wrote very well. And it's not very new, we have read it in different forms and formats. The Booth's view versus Forest view, 20,000 feet level versus microscopic view, whatever you want to call it as. But his analogy was we need both visionary birds and focused frogs. He called himself a frog. He was actually a mathematician who worked for in his whole life. He worked on a very small set of a mathematical problem in his whole life. So he said, I'm a frog. I look at only what is around me. I look at only that one flower shrub that is next to me. At the same time, birds that fly high, the generalists and people who actually pull something together from every discipline and are able to do something, they fly high. They are able to take ideas and diverse set of perspectives from different people and unify them together into a bird's eye view. So, according to him, both of them are important. I think that sort of sums up what is the requirement for an MVP. So, at least again, in our firm, I can only speak from personal experience. We have so I am in charge of new initiatives, which means that I am the generalist. I don't know tax, I don't know GST, I don't know US GAAP or IFRS, but I know a bit of each of them to actually go to the right person and pull it together into one solution. So that ability to have one person who actually pulls it into a solution, I think is a very critical aspect or a requirement for MDP to actually succeed. Most firms do that. I mean, I think it's easy to manage when it is in our size. I think as we grow bigger and specializations become deeper, this is a problem that the organizational structure becomes that much more important and difficult to manage. So collaboration, the benefit of having collaboration amongst people with varied experiences and expertise is the benefit of having an MVP, but it's also the challenge that has to be solved first. Can you actually pull in that experience? Can you actually get people to collaborate? So I think this is what we were speaking about. Creating a governance and a clear communication structure becomes extremely critical when you have a multidisciplinary practice. And I've seen this again in personal experience in other organizations that I've worked in. Many times organizational culture changes as specializations become deep and silos get created. Their tax billing rate is high, audit billing rate is low. Why should we collaborate? I go to them for some tax clearance, they want to know what is the inter-firm billing or cross-charge that I will get. So why should I give that advice? I'm not going to give this advice for free. So the guy who is actually holding a client relationship struggles to actually pull the right perspective. After setting up an MDP, if you get into this position, then you might a little bit it on and create niches and boutiques. So I think this is the first problem. The organizational structure becomes the first problem to resolve. And therefore, having the clear leadership structure also is important. And Big Four has done it beautifully for all these years. Hundreds of thousands of people, if they, of course they have silos, and some of my experiences come from them, both as a client as well as being a colleague. But if they don't have a working model, they could have survived and scaled to whatever 400, 500,000 employees that each of them have. So I think interdisciplinary training and development is a verbose slide, but essentially what it means is if I don't know what my colleague is capable of doing, if I don't know when I have to pull my valuation person, if I don't know that I have to go to a GST person when I am structuring an employee salary. See, employee salary, workman compensation, all of that used to be a HR consultant's job. Eventually it shifted to a tax consultant's job because it became tax planning heavy, right? And let's say last 2-3 years you have to get the GST guy involved as well, because you don't know which employee benefit you are giving has a GST impact. So if you don't know, you are never going to call them. So interdisciplinary training and making sure that people are aware where their expertise is required and making people aware that where expertise is required from elsewhere, you have to pull that, I think becomes very important. Having that mesh organization, people knowing everybody what they are capable of is very important. Again, goes back to organization structure. This should have been the first one. So if we approach any client solution from a client-centric perspective and what is the problem on hand versus at least I have been guilty of actually trying to show off my knowledge, right? Whatever little I have studied, if somebody comes to me with a problem, I start talking valuation because that's the thing that I know best. But if I understand that the guy has not come to me for a valuation problem, he wants me to get his term sheet and let him take a funding or a FDI transaction that's happening. Valuation is a small sliver of that activity. But if I lose focus of that, then I'm never going to be able to advise him on the overall transaction, getting understanding the risks of that agreement, understanding what angel tax issue is there, understanding what other company law matter may be there to be taken care of and so on and so forth. I think client satisfaction, if it is at the foremost, and actually the problem that we are solving, if it is at the foremost importance, I think multidisciplinary practice can actually come into picture because you will be able to put aside individual specializations, egos and knowledge aside and actually work towards a solution. I will talk about cultural integration first, and I think we spoke about it. Goes back to organization structure and culture again. if we are able to create an environment where each specialist feels that look, they are contributing to the overall solution, there is a clear organization growth path, there is a career path. That is why NDP firms concept came into picture, that they could offer partnerships to people who are not chartered accountants. From our center of the world, everybody wants to be partner in a CA firm, right? So that is why this whole concept of NDP CA firm came, so that culturally there could be a platform where everybody can grow together. Creating that culture even without the MDP CA firm format being available is very important. We have explored some routes within our firm. I'm sure everybody has their own method of managing that, giving career progression, giving salary, giving bonus somewhere else, giving some phantom stock, giving something else, making sure that people actually have something to look forward to if they actually behave as partners or other partners, even if they are not called as partners. In some cases, call them partners also, right? So, cultural integration, how do you break those silos, how do you break egos that come in between, and short-term gains versus a long-term value accretion to the firm becomes very important. It starts from the mission statement. All management gyan, but I think it's very important. We spend a lot of time talking about these things in the firm, because if we don't put that foundation in the next 5 years, 10 years, by the time in the next 10 years we will lose energy, and I think if that culture is not set up, then there's never going to be an ability to scale that. Technological solutions are very important, but I think the importance of actually having to try and build something out has become lesser today, because many of these technological tools are available. For example, Slack. A Slack channel can bring everybody together, everybody can collaborate, teams can bring everybody together and give their ideas. It's the culture that enables you to put whatever you want on the technology platform. But it's important to have some way of communicating within the firm. I think for anybody who wants to scale it, it's not easy not to have an electronic communication, archival, research and collaboration platform. But there are available very, very cheap and very, very ubiquitous Slack, be it Get Things Done, be it Trello boards, be it Asana, to project management tools, Basecamp. People have customized it. We took Teams and we customized it completely, and we are using it for our own benefit. So technological integration as important on top of a cultural integration. At the end of the day, from a firm's perspective, risk management also becomes extremely important as soon as you bring in different sets of professionals who are trained differently, whose incentives are different and whose outlook to business is different. Unless you have clear risk management protocols, it becomes very difficult to actually run an MDP as a firm. What I mean to say is, and I think we'll talk about one or two of these in a little more detail. Conflict of interest, I think, is a huge issue with respect to MDPs. As it is within CA firms, within existing non-audit services itself, there is a conflict of interest problem that we are still trying to solve. Listed companies have declarations and other things, but I know that for non-listed companies, many of our professional colleagues may have taken a call that something is a conflict of interest and something is not a conflict of interest. It's still the judgment or a discretion of the practitioner. Now add an engineer into this mix, who's not had to study ethics because engineering is not a profession, right? Engineering is a skill, a vocation. A professional goes through an ethics training, a conflict of interest, and because he's representing himself as a professional to the public. So how do you explain and make sure that there are enough protocols within the firm to safeguard or provide guardrails to an engineer that he doesn't inadvertently reach a conflict of interest issue? It's one problem. How do you ensure that the quality of deliverable, the formatting of the PPT, so to say, is consistent across the firm when you have a PPT guy, an Excel guy, and a Word guy working alongside each other? I'm just using analogies, but I think that's the message, right? I mean, so having that quality control, and quality is not just about quality of delivery alone, quality of processes, the safeguards that you take, the documentation, the calls that you take, expert consultation, all of those quality processes that are there for a particular service line. As chartered accountants, many of these are drilled into us from articulation place. Do all professions have the same language that they use? We don't know. They may have similar things, but how do you bring it together? And if you don't, how do you run a multidisciplinary practice under the same roof? I think this again, for For JAA to build a multidisciplinary practice, strategic partnerships was the only reason we actually survived the first few years and actually were able to grow. And the professionals and be it company secretaries, be it law firms, be it other businesses, be it investors, the amount of support and we get amount of business, not just business referral, even a sounding board or an advice before we actually get into a solution we put in place with so many of our professional colleagues across the lines of profession were so important, and it continues to be important. Let's face it, I mean, we have 6 partners. I don't think we have the wherewithal to manage a 7th or 8th vertical and build that into a service line, at least at this point of time. How many more verticals can any of us build? So we, even within a multidisciplinary framework, we would choose our area of operation. Right? We will choose our niche, our 60-40 side. Now, there are still other professions that we will still need to collaborate on. We can't have insolvency professionals coming in. There is a separate MBA regulation, there is a separate firm structure for that. They can't be part of this firm. There could be domain experts. There are a lot of clients where we do a diligence for a healthcare company, for example, where we ask a doctor or a medical professional or hospital administrator to come and be part of a DD team, either an advisor or a consultant or whatever it is. We can't hire all of them and keep them on our boards. Chartered engineers, again, they have their own set of regulations. So strategic partnerships, I think, is as critical to a multidisciplinary practice so that you can actually offer comprehensive service. So again, extremely critical from a success factor perspective. Of course, communication and branding. I mean, if you have it, you have to flaunt it. Otherwise, they will not know that they have to come to you. So, in fact, about a month and a half, 2 months back, we ran a survey with our clients, a client satisfaction survey. Half of them came back laughing, saying that we have never seen a CA firm doing it. What satisfaction? Your dad never asked it. In fact, he would scold them, saying that you're not paying me enough fees. There is no question of client satisfaction, right? It's a different world. One of the questions in that survey we had asked is, look, these are all the service lines we have. These are the number of clients we serve in those service lines. These are events, 5 of them are multinational operations, 2 of them are Indian giants, whatever, right? Are you aware that we provide this service? 60-70% of the answers came with something in that survey question where they said, we didn't know. Oh, we have a requirement. Take this assignment right now. ESOP planning. I have been personally doing ESOP structuring for 8 years. One of my closest clients came and said, I never knew you did it. Can you do it for me? So, if you don't let the world know what you can provide, how will you set up a multidisciplinary? How you advertise, obviously within the rules of the institute, within the regulations that govern the whole thing. It allows us to put up a website, it allows us to write case studies, it allows us to have thought leadership articles going out, and it allows us to actually talk in forums. So if we don't take advantage of those communications and actually brand ourselves as that, at least CA fraternity is probably going to be the first to call out MDP firms. If in some way you don't distinguish yourself, then the benefits of setting up a large shop like that will be lost. Doesn't mean that you have to go put up an advertisement somewhere, right? But there are so many other ways of letting your potential clientele know that you have these tools in your box. Okay, somehow killed 1 hour. I don't think, unless there are questions, we have another 15 minutes maybe. After that, I'm happy to take questions. I hope it's okay to finish a little early. So I think one of the other, an important factor to consider, and this is a lesson that we have learned in some ways hard way as well, from hiring people who are different in training and different in frameworks than what we are accustomed to usually, right? When you hire people, when you partner with people who are not in the same, cut from the same cloth, when I say cut, I'm trying to choose words which show that they're not inferior, but they're very different. The regulatory and legal aspects. So when we spoke about advocates not being able to practice with us because of bar restrictions, the legal and ethical compliances required, the conflict of interest requirements are very different between different professions. many of the vocations or disciplines that we want to bring in are not, again, as I mentioned, subject to professional regulations or a professional body or a professional set of things that we all go through, like let's say CPE requirement, or let's say independence declaration, quality manual that you have to have in the firm for assurance services and so on and so on. If you are creating a multidisciplinary firm with other partners who may not have the same requirements, how do you ensure that you are able to bring it together? And the next slide talks a little bit about some of the issues that firms have faced with respect to this. Client expectations and quality of delivery. Expectation management from a client is extremely important. So some of the clients that we get, again, some of the legacy clients, as I was saying, some of the clients that come from my father's legacy, or they need help with registration of the land, or drafting of a land conveyance deed, help in registering with the sub-registrar's office, or whatever. And they think that we are a one-stop shop and we can provide all of those services, right? And we would like to accommodate them because they may not know better where to go. But if I tell them that I will get everything done for you, I will draft the agreement for you, sub-registrar is my friend, and I will actually get the registration done tomorrow morning, 7:30 is the right time, now column, before that, whatever. I better come good on it. So if I am going into the market and saying I am a multidisciplinary practice and I am able to do these things, I have to make sure that the client expectations are set in a way in which our endpoints are very, very clear. I think that's a very, very important thing. Otherwise, you'll lose the trust and the benefit of having a one-stop shop. What is the nature of service? We should not confuse people. So if I go and advertise saying that I am a multidisciplinary practice, I have domain experts, I have cost accountants now, I have company secretaries, I have some engineers, I am going to come and reduce your cost, right? First of all, what am I doing, right? I can only advise on ways to actually reorganize their business that could potentially generate cost savings. But if I create an expectation that now I am a multidisciplinary firm, I have every tool in the box and I am actually able to reduce your cost by 10%, I am not going to be able to come good on that, and I will lose that perception, trust, and everything else that I have built on. Consistency of quality. Let us say I actually do a diligence, and I have gone and sold the assignment saying that I will do a complete diligence. I have a software engineer who will do a code review also. I have a cyber security expert who will go and check the way the website is set up. I will actually get a SOC audit done as part of the diligence. I will actually go and see whether the guy has adequate safeguards on the IT side. I will go and do a finance 3D, a tax 3D, and a legal 3D. Let's say I have gone and sold all of these, and we have done that. But if my tax 3D, my core areas of my finance 3D, my tax 3D, we have done a brilliant job and we have given the right report. But the partner with whom I actually went and did my cyber security review did not do a good job, or did not completely come through, or the quality was so bad, or the report itself was very, very different. It did not highlight the risks, it did not understand the client's perspective of why the DD assignment was being done. Then that battle is lost. So very critical to actually put some of those risk management procedures to ensure that whatever you commit, manage that perception, manage that expectation, make sure that you deliver to that expectation. Talent management becomes extremely difficult risk to manage as well. Again, personal experience, we have burnt our hands, we have hired engineers, paid salary for 3 months, 6 months, nothing happened because they didn't understand what we were saying, we didn't understand what they were trying to do. We also thought we would become a multidisciplinary firm, we hired some couple of engineers, didn't work. So, number one. Number two, expectations and aspirations are extremely different. They have a market that is wider, larger, let's say engineers, just taking an example. Software engineers to be particular, or people who can do IS audits for us. The market is extremely big. They have to do, and talent shortage is across the board. They just have to go and they'll get a 50,000 rupees increase anywhere in the world, right? Anywhere in Bangalore, definitely. Throw a stone, there's a software company. So, the way to manage that talent is extremely different as compared to managing a chartered accountant. Their expectations are different, career paths are different. They ask for ESOP. CA firm, what ESOP will I give? So, the most critical problem to solve from a talent perspective has been expectation management, training, learning and development, culture and staff integration. They didn't want to sit together on the same floor. Not because they don't like each other. They just don't know what to talk to each other. One guy is talking Java, the other guy is talking CS. So, from a legal and regulatory perspective, I thought I'd spend 5 minutes on this because while we touched upon it, most professions, be it CS, CWA, CA itself, are subject to separate provisions of the Act, their respective regulations, the declarations that they have to give, CPA requirements are different, ethical requirements are different from declaration. Ethical requirements are not different, but compliance to those ethical requirements by the respective institutes are different. The standards that are applicable are very differently worded to match that particular profession. The legal liabilities. What is the legal liability that I am taking if I am providing a service? Very, very different for each profession. And not, I mean, we are accustomed to thinking between CA, CS and CWA. But, so we do SOC audits within our firm. SOC audits are to be signed by CPA, given to us, given by the service organization to their clients, where they rely on the controls of the service organization based on their audit report. And when we got into the service line, we didn't know that, of course, forget legal liabilities and all of that. We didn't know that our expectations extend to having calls with their clients to assure that we have done everything that their auditor wants to sign off on. Right? So, unless you know the depth and the width of the river, it becomes very difficult to figure out whether you can actually cross it or not. So, client privacy and confidentiality. The concept of client privacy and confidentiality is ingrained into our brains because of our training. But do other professions have the same requirements? Or are they allowed to, let's say, take a work product of one client and copy paste it onto somebody else? We have seen that big case that's going on. I think TCS settling some 1,760 crores, right? Because they copied code base from one GitHub to another client's GitHub and actually wrote the code and they were able to prove that and seek damages. So, I'm not saying there are no confidentiality requirements there, but are they enforced and drilled into people's minds to an extent where it becomes part of their daily lookout? So, we have to be vigilant about potential conflicts of interest as well. Again, expectation management, client wants everything done, they don't want to do anything outside of your office because in Bangalore they don't want to go to another office. They get stuck in traffic, right? So, with all of these things, if you see on the right hand side, there is a lot of news that's coming out on people actually trying to split multidisciplinary practices. EY did a massive exercise for the last 3 years trying to see whether they can split the consulting division out and audit division separately. So from a multidisciplinary firm, they wanted to split the firm into two different entities altogether.
No, it is because of the legal cases which are going on them.
And they want to safeguard themselves.
Yeah,
and they want to
safeguard the institution as a whole.
And of course, they want to address the conflict of interest as well.
So if they wanted to address, they would have addressed earlier only. Now it is because of the regulatory pressure.
You're right.
Doing it.
You're right.
Yeah.
So, I think what this slide tries to address is there's so many issues with multidisciplinary practices. Each firm is trying to address that differently. You're absolutely right. There's so much of liability sitting on EY's head from an audit perspective.
Yeah.
They don't want, the other partners of the other disciplines don't want to be bogged down by the liabilities of this firm. That's exactly the problem of cultural integration and action management.
Same thing has happened with Arthur and Anderson. They had an audit issue actually.
Correct.
That audit issue has brought down the whole firm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is that because audit has a different, so to bring it into context of this slide, audit has a different legal, ethical, public perception requirement. Consulting does not, or may not, in all of respects. How do you balance the two, such that a consulting team is not brought down by audit's flaws, or many times audit, it's not even audit's flaws, it's public. I mean, auditors are also a whipping boy, right, in some instances. So, similarly, Bar Council has asked Big Four not to offer legal services.
Yeah.
Most Big Four had actually created legal services, or they had taken over firms, or they had some arrangement by which they were giving litigation support and so on and so forth. Again, because legal regulatory reasons, protectionism, Bar Council requirements, whatever it is. But we have to resolve it. Unless that is resolved, how do you create a multidisciplinary?
No, they want to split only because of regulatory pressure. It is not because
That's the
of
first one you're talking
all the three.
Right. Absolutely.
It's only because of regulatory pressure they want to split the audit and assurance services, sir,
That's right.
and complete separate entity not related to us
That's it. That
and
is,
other services.
that is it. You're right.
It's not only in India, all over the world. They are
Correct.
trying
Correct.
to do it.
There is actually, I think, an article from the US or something like that.
Yeah.
In the Europe is what wanted to split it first. So I think we spoke about how to make it work. Set the client expectations, what you can, what you cannot do. Have strategic partnerships. Make sure that you have talent that is available to you on a need basis, on a flexible basis. Make sure that you are able to bring the same quality standards. You have one manager who brings all, or an integrator who brings everything together to actually give a client service. Talent management is important. Designated general partner. What I mean by general partner is the guy who can actually bring it together and aggregate it at a level where actually it can service a client. Be vigilant about potential conflicts of interest or legal and regulatory issues that may impact. There are so many other anecdotes that I can't share because of confidentiality reasons, especially with respect to conflict of interest of ourselves or our friends. We got into serious legal issues even in India. How do you break silos and discourage one-upmanship? We spoke about it. Typical issues where we're trying to see whether all partners are equal as long as they're able to create value for the firm. There has to be some amount of harmony and equanimity, and not somebody thinking that they're doing everything for the firm and some other service line is not, and this is profitable, that's not profitable. Solution-oriented approach. Again, this is an acronym I've personally put it into the firm. The acronym I've borrowed is from, I think, US Navy SEAL teams do this. They only do the R, I've added the bar. So we call it they call it after action review, we call it after assignment review, and we added the before assignment review as well. These are the two meetings where we have actually seen the benefits of multidisciplinary practice that we have in the firm come together. Before audits, we have a meeting where tax partner, myself, the audit partner, GST partner, we sit together and discuss the client's previous year's financials, what other risks came up in the earlier year, which other area of work that we handle has a risk and how to address it in this year's audit. And after action review, we actually go back and see whether the risks that we identified are valid, have they been addressed, and that also gives us a lot of cross-selling opportunities. So this is that last bar and R is where our whole multidisciplinary benefits of our firm have actually come together. So I thought it's good to actually include it there. From a slide deck perspective, that's all I have. I'm happy to have any interactions or discussions that you may want to have, any questions if I may be able to answer. To try and see personal experiences if I can pull it.
How is the revenue shared between the partners, sir?
So in our firm, the way we have done it is, so there is a profit sharing ratio as part of the deed in any case. There's been proportional to capital, whatever it is. Right? On top of it, we have put a structure where the profit that is there, 75% of the profits that is available after partners' remunerations is split between the partners in the ratio of revenue and profit. And we also have some pointers for client referrals and things like that.
So partner-wise revenue is taken separately.
Partner-wise, vertical-wise revenue, because verticals are equal to partners in our firm at least.
Yeah.
We take vertical-wise revenues. Let's say I have earned 1 versus a total of 7. I get 1 by 7 of 75% of the profits for revenues. Similarly for profit. So that allows us to incentivize partners for individual excellence and delivery. There is a 15% that we use for cross-referral that allows us for cross-selling. There are joint assignments where we distribute the revenue share. For example, if it is one advice of structuring, I could be involved from a structuring valuation perspective, tax team may be involved from a tax perspective, they could have brought the client, and we may have accounting advisory team to give accounting entries for that merger scheme, whatever it is. We allocate the work based on estimated time or whatever, on a goodwill basis.
Could you share your insights on maybe the pitfalls that others can learn off of?
I think I did, but I'll try. So while I was studying a little while earlier, I only shared what will work. Right? To come to this stage where we are all sitting together, our partners, many of us are sitting together and we are able to talk about multidisciplinary practice, has actually gone through a lot of pitfalls and hits through the period of time. I was telling you about the SOC example. So we created that specialization. We have been working on that for the last 6-7 years. It's not that we started new. In fact, to the extent that one of my partners went and offered herself as an intern to one of the IS auditors. And she herself was 15 years, 16 years experienced person. She went and said, I'll become an intern, let me earn IS audit. It didn't work, actually, to be honest. So from that, then we went and hired engineers. We thought we'll learn from them. You know, they are software engineers, they will know everything about IS, and we'll learn. It didn't work. We lost a lot of money there. We went and partnered with, so we were doing a SAP ITGC review at that time for SAP, a new implementation. We went and partnered with an implementation agency in Bangalore who worked with us to do this. It was very difficult because he couldn't understand where we were coming from. He's an implementation guy. He knows everything about SAP. He knows what queries to write, what T codes to use. He knows all of that. But he doesn't know what we are doing and why we are doing it. So it took intense discussions and probably 3 times the effort that we had estimated and quoted for to be able to say that, look, this is what we want to test. Access controls is what we want to test. This is why we want to test. This is the segregation of duty we want. And actually drive that whole engagement. So, that assignment is an example where eventually partnerships work. Employment did not work. Client expectation we had set up wrongly. We had said we can do it. I'm saying it openly. And we made a loss. And like that we must have had multiple examples. Like every time we have started a service we have taken hits. When IFC first came in, 8-9 years back, we jumped into it because I said I have done SOX in Wipro. I know how to do SOX audits. I know how to create risk control matrix. I know how to do flowchart. I know all of that. IFC was a different ballgame. We were in an Indian context. Many of them didn't have some of the documentation. So when we actually jumped in and quoted fees, we were trying to desperately trying to increase our size of the firm. We got business because I've been in that. I mean, good networks, good alumnus, good referrals. We got the business, but then next question came: who will deliver? So we sat, worked. I mean, brilliant marketing. So I created this placemat, explained IFC, went and spoke to 30 clients, took classes to the finance team saying this is what is IFC, this is how you're, all of that we did. But we didn't have the wherewithal to deliver all of them because everything had to be delivered before statutory audit, no? So that's another learning on client expectations and what we can actually do and build the infrastructure before you actually start. Build the house before you live in it.
The problem is most of the businesses are handled by MSMEs in India. And they want all services but they are not willing to pay.
That is true.
But we have a cost.
That is the biggest learning. That is the biggest learning.
How do you recover the cost?
Absolutely. That is the biggest learning. Valuation services, and I have a couple of friends here who do valuation services for a living. Valuation is not a run-of-the-mill service. It has become like that thanks to our regulation. Regulators also are running around, right? Like headless chicken, something RBI will do, something merchant banker will do, something somebody else will do. But everything is required for one fund, one single capital. So that's another learning, by the way. Regulatory learning. How it is doing. If you have to issue shares in a company, in a private limited company, let us say to a non-resident as well as a resident, you literally require 3 valuation reports. And the cost of 3 valuation reports, if you actually do it properly with using your brains, should be anywhere nothing less than 5-6 lakh rupees even for a small issue. Can you charge?
And client is not willing to pay.
So who will pay? His capital raise is 1 crore, 6 lakhs, he will give me, what will he give his investment banker, what will he do?
I have experienced this.
So, non-resident requires the FEMA report. FEMA report, chartered accountant, okay, chartered accountant will give. Company law will require RV report. Okay, some of us like myself, RV, CA, I'll issue, no problem. 1 report, 1 fees, no worry. Income tax guys will say, angel tax is now applicable to NROs, not just residents. Go get a merchant banker valuation report. That guy now is completely in demand. He doesn't want anything less than 1 lakh even for just copy pasting my report. So I think regulations are also messing this up, right? So, but this is where so the learning there is, one, we are not able to price for our services. Second, I'm able to give some efficiency if I'm a multidisciplinary practice. Because I'm an RV and a CA, I can at least reduce cost of one report for that client. We spoke about learnings in talent management, in regulatory, client expectations. Yeah.
So Girish, when you have talked a couple of times now about incentivizing the right way. In fact, you also talked about, you dwelled a little bit on partner sharing ratios as well. So in a growing multidisciplinary firm, let us say we are not the big four brigades, we are not, right? So when you start a new service line, it is always a risk. You talked yourself about SOCs and all. So there is, let us say, one partner who takes charge in starting a new service line, and it comes with a fair amount of risk. So in new firms, do you think it's better to have a, let us say, everyone gets a certain money out of the practice, and let there not be any individualistic performance-based incentivization? Or is it better to think more like the Big 8s or the Big 10s, who always value individual performances over partner performance?
No, it's a very good question. I think when I answered the question earlier, I answered it without giving the whole context. My apologies. That is how we have landed now. Now when all of us are making profits in our service lines, we are capable of agreeing to a profit share based incentive. Now that all of us have reached a minimum critical level of revenue, we are able to agree saying that you share based on revenue, no problem. This was not the case when we started off. And to a large part of that time, in fact, we started off saying that we will incentivize, all of us will eat what we kill, essentially. Right? That's how we started off. A year later, we realized that, for example, I came from Wipro. I had forgotten audit, I had forgotten tax, I had forgotten everything. I was very good at getting business. I was not delivering anything. The structure that I personally put in ensured that I wouldn't make any money. Though I was bringing in 50-60% of the revenues was coming from my networks of selling. So it didn't work. So we revisited that. Then we realized that unless you fix a fixed minimum, how do you attract a new partner? And what incentive they have to come to office every day? Because they are constantly under pressure to get business. Right? So we put in a flat salary, adequate salary, to make sure that they don't have to struggle about, think about monthly cash flows, but they have something. So that evolution came after 3 or 4 years when we had adequate cash flows to pay that salary, because it became part of payroll suddenly. So once we had that, then we had to again go back and see how do we incentivize. Because somebody said, look, I am pulling all the effort, I am actually generating profits. This service line that you have started is making losses. So we had to say, no service line will get judged for first 3 years. We are going to invest. It's a common call that we are taking. Firstly, you sign up saying that you need that service line. Once you have signed up, suck it up. 3 years, support that partner. Don't ask for capital contribution. Don't ask for how much profit you are bringing in. Don't ask if they are hiring one extra person. Support for 3 years. After that, you ask. So it is all hindsight. But the reason why it worked for us was we were transparent from day one. That 10 years later we will get to a Big 8 situation. Till then we will struggle. Number one. Number two, we will change goalposts every day if required to make sure that it works. We were able to do it because we are a small bunch of people who know each other for 20 years. All of my partners have been known to me for a good part of the last 3-4 decades. So we were able to have a trust between us. Can you do that in a corporate setup? I don't know. I don't think so. So if you are starting a multidisciplinary practice, the first thing is to have that trust between partners to make sure that you set the expectations internally that, there will be a time when everybody will be judged and you will be compensated for higher effort that you may be putting in or higher success that you may have. But till then you have to support the others so that we can all benefit from that common growth. If you don't believe in common growth, don't come into that MDP setup. That's absolutely fine. But have that conversation. Have it so many times that it becomes ingrained. Because mindset also changes. No? I feel very generous when I get my first paycheck. Third month, I will say that why should I subsidize? So mindset also changes. We have to keep repeating it to ourselves completely, very, very consistently. So it changes every day. There is no one set pattern. I've spoken to Big 4 partners. I've seen their partnership deeds. I've seen law firm partnership deeds. Nobody has the same structure. Everybody has very, very different structures. So everything is based on what works for that particular organization and organization culture.
So if we have like that, we will not have a stability.
Absolutely right. But where is the stability today? If you are creating a practice, you are already an entrepreneur. So you might, if your choice is to grow as a multidisciplinary practice, accept that instability and put structures around it so that you are protecting each other. That's all you can do. So if I am clear that I get my 2 lakhs regardless of whether I sell something this month or not, at least I will not be worried about that. I will not look for one small side opportunity. I will not let the whole value system dilute. I will not take a conflict of interest aside.
Okay, one thing, so 2 points from my side. One thing I would like to appreciate, while you said that it's the first time for you, but I really enjoyed, because while you were very serious, but the flavor of the humor which you put in, I really enjoyed those points. So that's the one part. The second part is, while I came here with an understanding that how to increase the practice part, because I'm kind of a startup into the practice. So I was in the corporate world and I started with the part-time practice and all those things. So while you have answered all the questions which I had in mind, because while you were discussing more on the MDP or the last setup, but then you kind of touch base on some basic aspects as well, which are necessary to start or to stabilize the practice. But then I just thought if you have any suggestion for any new start, let's say for example me, I was used to kind of talking to PwC and Deloitte for any smallest of the thing in the world, right? Now when I start my practice, I have to do the things, everything from my hand, right? And it can be anything to anything in which possibly I may not know as well. So now the second thing which I struggle is that when I see in the thing, people come with all kind of queries and questions to me. So the idea is that while I try to create a specialization in the tax space, but then I receive the queries all along. So every day I think that where should I do and where should I go, because everything is scattered.
Yeah.
So someday I think that I should go into the GST because somebody is asking me GST. Next day somebody says that can you help me in terms of property, legal registration requirements and all those things. Well, it could be set as a property dealer, but then all the kind of technical things come. So while in my mind I kind of structured that possibly I need to have patience and try to stick to one thing before I go into that level where I can hire some specialist into the space. So any suggestion from you, while I know you have answered broadly in your session.
So I try and answer it from a personal perspective.
Yeah.
Hopefully it will answer your question.
Yeah.
So when I said when I quit Wipro in 2014 and I jumped into practice with my partners, I was in the same space. In fact, you were talking about tax. I had very little knowledge about tax as well. Only to the extent of business finance. I used to run a business. I was the finance head for revenue earning vertical. And in a specialized area like Wipro, large setup, we had 300, 400 people in the finance team. While I was a senior finance guy, my job was contract negotiation with the customer, with a US customer, and deal structuring. So, revenue recognition only to the extent of audit. That's all from a technical perspective. Tax is out of my picture. It's not in my scope at all. That time there was no GST, VAT anyway was not in scope. Audit was limited only to revenue recognition. That's it. And with all the pressures of a listed company, reporting requirement, my business was really about not less than 15% ever of the overall turnover of Wipro. So immense pressure on revenue recognition and MIS. But that's all there was. So when I actually came into, and of course I had done some deal structuring, valuation also as a consumer, like you said. I would call PwC or EY or Duffin Phelps and get a valuation done. I would read a report. I would get a DD report. I would consume that report. Each of this is a consumer. So when I came into practice, I had no clue. I went through the same issues that you are saying you are going through. People are calling me from all over. And the office was at home, so I was basically chilling out, sleeping in the afternoon and all that. I had no clue. First couple of months was very difficult. And what I did, however, was I accepted accounting assignments. Very small value relative to today, accounting assignments, because I realized that while they called it VCFO, it was actually accounting assignments. that gave me a view to path to actually understanding all the transactions to an extent that I could understand, have a working conversation. I had to pick up tax as a specialization because we didn't have a tax specialist. We had audit specialists. To start with itself, we had audit specialists, both internal audit and statutory audit. But we did not have tax specialists. I had to pick up tax specialization. So I got into all kinds of WhatsApp groups and strategic partnerships. Right? Big word, but essentially calling up a friend and saying, "Can you please help me?" And same for VAT. Right? VAT was going down. GST was coming in 2014 to 16. Is not a very big time frame. 2014-15 already people were selling GST consulting and making their entire name in GST. 14 to 16 was the time people became GST specialists, to be honest. I had no clue, so I had to rely on strategic partnership. Very quickly we brought in a partner for GST, brilliant guy. So we went through the route of partnerships, both external and internal partnerships, to create that verticalization. Because we were very clear that this is the headache we want to take. We want to take the headache of scale. We were clear from day one. So I had to invest in partners who come onto my partnership deal, or partners who are willing to help me for either commercial consideration or friendships. And of course, there is no substitute for that hard work of trying to understand tax guru is the biggest strategic partner, right? Because there is so much of information. If you are able to put it together, you can put it together. But I believe that you should either be a generalist like myself who knows a little bit of everything and who is able to integrate it, or go into a specialization that is not overexploited out there. So if you are now wanting to go into a tax specialization after years of doing something else, I would find it difficult. I don't know, you would. So I would rather find a different specialization.
The method of doing business in big company is different than doing business in MSME.
Absolutely.
You cannot have the same approach here.
Absolutely.
My son is chartered accountant working in a Boston consulting group. He is thinking his method of doing work is totally different than what I do. I jumped into practice since 1991, 32 years of experience. I am master in income tax. He doesn't know how to compute his income, and I am hiring his IT return. When his specialization is different.
So you are seeing the problem from the different perspective of what I saw. When I came into practice, my father said, "Please don't come into practice." So by that time, he had finished 32 years of service practice. And I couldn't come here. He was filing my income tax returns as well. And he would scold me left, right, saying, "You have no clue. What kind of a chartered accountant are you? Who passed you? You don't know even that. Somebody is coming, somebody is coming." I used to ask him, "Why are you writing a will for your client? Ask him to go to a lawyer." Say, no, you don't understand. It's not the question of writing the 3-page document. I know his father, I know his daughter, I know what they want to dig with. So it's a very, and to bring it all together, I think very difficult to specialize. You can try and pick up a field that is up and coming, let's say forensic, let's say fund accounting, let's say family business, let's say data analytics, or anything that is related to that. If you've been in finance, so once accounting happened, VCFO was a natural progression. VCFO gave me a soft landing. So that's the job I had done. It became easy for me to take that, consume services from other friends or other practitioners, and actually build that specialization, build that knowledge over a period of time till I can hire specialists regularly.
I think you have answered the questions which I was looking for. So the kind of situation which I am in is, while I was also a business finance guy, head of a particular vertical, but then now, so the reason why I say this specialization in tax, because for last 1 or 2 years I've been getting the questions on tax. So I thought maybe tax is the area. But then while I was thinking of tax, I'm getting all sorts of hundreds of other queries as well, GSTs to other. But I think the way you have answered is correctly that I think when we are into the practice space, and at least when a startup, I think we have to be open for everything. Now in that case, we need to look forward for a strategic partnership. Now that partnership doesn't need to mean that, for example, I need to hire someone. I can also take help from the connects which I have. Because that way, while you also learn, while you give the work to the people as well. So I think that's possibly a model which will help to stabilize or sustain at the start.
And see, I think one more thing that really worked for us at that point of time is that from day one we said that when we say strategic partnerships, when we say we have handshake agreements of friends and people who help us with this, we said we are going to be absolutely generous about it. There is no referral concept. It's not that we take a cut of the fees or anything. if I want help from a specialist in another profession, whether he is a small practitioner, large practitioner, whether he is a large firm or a young guy, senior person, doesn't matter. So we built those networks of people whom we were extremely generous in sharing our piece of the pie, so to say. That 4 to 5 years of that clarity is helping us even now. So we get so much of back. So there was this gentleman who was studying for company secretary at that time, and his principal company secretary had passed away, and he didn't know what to do, and he finished his articleship or whatever. We supported him. He said he wants to be independent. He doesn't want to be part of it. I'm just taking that as one example.
Yeah.
Very junior person. He would make a lot of mistakes, but procedurally and ROC wise, he was really good. We invested heavily on him. Personally, I think he's wealthier than me today. He was a student when we came. But that network helps so much that he has the confidence and ability to bring clients to us today, give solutions, and actually that is the kind of strategic network that I'm talking about.
Now that you're a large multidisciplinary firm, how do you see yourself growing from say
From your mouth to God's ears, but
from where you are to a fairly say a big 6 or big 8 or big 10? How do you see that journey, or what do you see as the challenges? We've spoken of all the SME issues, right?
yeah. So let me try and answer that. I don't know whether I will answer that question the same tone, the actual question that was asked. For us, the opportunities are not in just expanding geographically. So we have not opened a single branch. We've had opportunities. Because we don't see the benefit of actually trying to do the same digging work in Chennai or Coimbatore or somewhere else at this point of time. It will add to revenue, no doubt about it, but it will also add to air miles and nothing much from a satisfaction perspective. We are actively working on building 2 or 3 additional service lines. So some of these things that I actually put in this slide. Each of these is in my to-do list to see whether I can shortlist 1 or 2 of them to start and develop as service lines that can contribute to us becoming a larger firm. For example, SOC audits, IT audits, SOC specifically, there is a humongous opportunity. So to actually build in a truly multidisciplinary practice there, right? Cybersecurity experts added to assurance experts, very good combination. We don't want to be in ESG, but family business advisory and family office advisory is something that we have been doing. That's an area that we want to grow. Overlay that with fund accounting, and that's how we want to grow scale. So we actually want to get to that scale from handling large number of transactions for large organizations, rather than adding too many more verticals than what we have been doing. And of course, geography, if it happens, it happens.
How do you see the general direction of MDP? Not just your firm, but let's say, do you think that the future CAs will be very eager to get into MDP, or?
So gentleman here was just talking about it. He has no choice but to become an MDP. He's already an MDP. He's getting queries on IT, GST, everything else. So we are all actually already MDPs. I think the question comes back to whether it's our choice. If we want scale, we want the headache of scale. If I want to see 200 people in the office, and if that is what gives me the satisfaction, if scale is what gives me the satisfaction, I will grow it as an MDP. Whether regulations support it or not, I will build in structures to support it to grow into a large organization. If what satisfies me is actually handling a handful of clients, high value clients, highly valued clients, let me put it that way, then I will construct it very different. I could be a boutique firm, I could be a valuation firm today, if I choose.
But it seems that today's ask is more of an MDP, not MDP per se, but to be for all and everything.
At least for small and medium practitioners.
Yeah.
Unless you are an MDP, you reduce your. So as it is, if you okay, that's actually a very good question. If you see where the regulations are going, where generally the government is taking us, or where the system is pushing us towards a scale. If you want to do a bank audit today, you go through a qualification criteria which is not easy to manage for a new firm. Number of partners, multiple qualifications, experience in handling IT systems, IS audits, and so on and so forth. NBFCs, they anyway put it out of reach of most practitioners because of qualification criteria, right? Government keeps talking about wanting to build the next Indian Big Four or whatever they want to call it. Indian multinational firm. They want to export accounting services. They also want to create Indian firms that are large enough to be called Indian multinationals. There was this huge NAFRA paper that got debated some 2 years back. I don't know how many of you were interested in it, but I somehow got involved in it, including in trying to figure out how to lobby against it, about removing private company audits. Right? All of these are indications of the fact that eventually, as the profession matures, we should all become consolidated. There is a scale that has to come in, and therefore MDs. I think that is where businesses as well as government will push us to. It will not take away individual practitioners, general practitioners, advisors. I don't think that is going to go away. But eventually, a large number of firms have to become MDPs to survive. Sir, to thrive. I should not use words.
So the days of the sole proprietor are over, generally.
I don't think so, sir.
No.
So, again, I go back to that very nice book by David Epstein called Range. This is the second time I'm reading it. I really love that book. In my heart, I'm actually a sole proprietor. Within my firm, I think I am a sole proprietor. Because you will still need a family doctor to hold your wrist and say, okay, you may have a heart problem, boss, please go to that cardiac specialist. So unless you have that worldview where you can actually explain, understand the problem from a very large perspective, you can't direct him to a specialist also. The days of the sole proprietor doing everything for everybody is going to change. That's all I can say. But I think it's still a huge requirement to have that general advice.
Yes, the general physician is
Absolutely critical.
completely different.
Government regulations are encouraging or discouraging MDP?
I think they will encourage. Let me put it. I don't know whether they are encouraging, but they are pushing towards scale. They want to encourage scale. Scale cannot happen in a single horse carriage. That's all. I hope you get what I'm
So if they wanted to encourage scale, then IBC they would have allowed in MDP, but they are not doing it.
Conflict of interest again. No? Again, conflict of interest. It's actually truly an MDP. And see, when I say conflict of interest, it's not just from our perspective. IBPI is run differently for a different purpose, under a different set of regulations. They went to the extent of writing entire regulations, training curriculum, the professional ethical requirements, the legal requirements, the reporting everything has been written from A. They did not copy from either of the three professions.
So that is what I am telling. When the government is running 4 different professions, you consider IBP also. So this means that the government doesn't want them to come together, or else they would have already merged all the 3.
So what I am trying to say is that you are looking at it from one perspective,
Yeah.
and I completely agree with that perspective. The other perspective is even government has conflict of interest. Even within their Ministry of Finance, why would we then have so many valuation requirements for the same reason? The objectives or reasons for why certain things happen at a government level, I don't know, but I think it will take 20 years to know. If they were truly integrated in their thinking, you are right, they would have put IBPI along with this. Because most of the insolvency professionals are chartered accountants in any case. They would have actually encouraged them. But they have taken a slightly different tack. They have actually allowed you to create insolvency or whatever they call it as, right? Firms, where they are allowing other professionals to come in because they want CEOs to come in, they want engineers to come in, they want other people to come in who are able to actually capable to bring a company to
Run the company. Yeah.
So they are actually encouraging MD, contrary to what we were talking about. They are just not doing it together with CEOs.
So what I am telling is, if they wanted to have a true MDP, they would have taken all the 3 institutes and the government would have framed a regulation. Now the initiative is from only the institutes.
You're stating the problem also.
Yeah.
We have 3 institutes.
Yeah.
We have 21 or whatever council members in each of the institutes.
Yeah.
Each of them having personal agendas and legacies and institutes, visions and missions that they have to protect. They all have competitive pressures
No, that
from
is
foreign
what I am telling
institutes.
is, the government wants to create the next big 4 from India.
Yeah.
So if that is their objective, they would have brought in some kind of a regulation towards that goal.
Sir, I completely agree,
It's too
but I don't
complex.
think they'll do
The
it.
way they work probably is too complex.
We both are aligned in our helplessness in knowing that the government is not able to do anything.
No, if they want to achieve something, they have to give the path also.
True. True, I agree.
Yeah.
Hopefully they do it. Directionally, at least they accept it if they want to do it.
So we have only 15 minutes more.
I managed somehow in my first outing not to sweat my way through 2 hours.
It was a good session. I think that. Thank you.
Multidisciplinary practice. Most of the Indian chartered accountants in practice are either individuals or proprietors. And when I did my articleship, my principal used to handle himself almost all discipline single-handedly. Then came this specialization concept wherein nowadays, I mean, if you have any eye problem, you don't go to a general practitioner, I mean MBBS doctor, right? You go to an ophthalmologist or eye specialist or something like that. So in the same way, CAs also can handle whatever verticals themselves. Only thing is, I mean, gone are those days. Now you need to get yourself certified with some certification kind of either offered by ICI or otherwise. So as a MDP firm, we have JAA and Associates as example to quote. With that note, 1.5 hours, I mean, almost 2 hours, yeah. 2 hours fantastic deliberation, and he has shared his personal experience and practical experiences with us. Thank you so much. A big round of applause for CA Girish Kaushik. As a token of gratitude and respect, we would like to hand over a memento to the speaker on behalf of all members present here and all the managing committee members. So we would like to request CA Ravi Kumar sir to come on to dais and then do the honors. Thank you, sir. Before closing, I have a couple of announcements. We have 2 days ICI Startup Yatra on 6th of December and 7th of December in the same venue for 12-hour CPE. And we have a study circle meeting on common errors in financial reporting, AS, Ind AS by Mohan R. Lavi sir on Wednesday, on 13th of December. And we have 2-day CPE conference Friday and Saturday on 15th of December and 16th of December. And we have study circle meeting on issues in capital gains, navigating daily practice challenges for CAs on Wednesday on 20th December by Deepak Chopra. With that, I conclude. Thank you so much. Keep supporting.